From fitness enthusiasts and ultimate Frisbee aficionados to the TOBU Fitness Podcast, your guide to elevating your game and mastering the art of ultimate Frisbee through the lens of strength and conditioning. Whether you're a seasoned player or just stepping onto the field for the first time, this podcast is your one-stop destination for unlocking your true potential. This is the TOBU Fitness Podcast with your host, certified strength and conditioning coach, Justin Shelby.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the TOBU Fitness Podcast. This is episode number 16. We've got our first ever recurring guest, Manny Eckert. Manny, welcome back to the show.
What is up? Excited to be here.
We've got a lot of stuff that we want to talk about today. Like we were just talking about, this is going to be less of an interview and more about us just kind of talking about some new exciting stuff that Manny and I have been working on. So really excited to get this stuff out. I want to talk about what it entails and what the future is going to look like. But yeah, before we get started with that, like I said, you're the first recurring guest. I did the math. I mean, it's not like I have a ton of episodes anyway, but this is episode number 16. You've been on 2 of them, so you've been on 12.5%. The episodes.
It's an honor.
Thank you. Manny, what's been new though?
What's been new in my life? I've been playing so much pickleball. My daily routine is like I wake up and then head to the pickleball courts, play for a few hours, come back, do my Frisbee workout, go coach Frisbee, and then I don't know, do something fun in the evening. But it's been a lot of fun. I know I'm not going to be able to play as many other sports during the Frisbee season as I am right now. So I'm getting in while I can.
Yeah.
Also got playoffs for the high school team I'm coaching. So that's exciting. I feel like this team has a ton of talent, and it's not like the official boys season right now in Seattle. Typically the boys season is in the fall, but we've kind of got like a more informal league right now. And so an opportunity for players who didn't necessarily play a lot in the fall to play more right now. And it's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. How's the high school team looking?
We're looking good. I feel like, so we had a rough start to the season. We lost 2 universe point games to start, and then we lost a couple more games. And then, but then our last regular season game, we beat one of the best teams in the league, my alma mater, Nathan Hale. And I feel like things really started clicking that game. So I think today is going to be a great opportunity to showcase things that we've been working on all season, and hopefully it all comes together.
Nice. So wait, so game tonight then you're saying?
Hopefully 2 games. 2 games if we win the first one.
Oh, nice. Exciting. Well, good luck to you guys.
Thank you very much.
I know on my end, I'm not playing, but I'm a practice player on the Austin Soul, and opening day is tonight for us. So we've got a Soul home game against the Houston Havoc, who are also just coming off of a win. So that'll be a pretty exciting game. That'll actually be my first time. Well, obviously first time as a practice player, but also like as a spectator ever at a UFA game. So first time ever attending a UFA game, which I'm excited about. But I know for you, club season, or I guess you as a player, club season is right around the corner. Anything new or exciting with Sockeye?
Lots of exciting stuff. I don't know if there's anything like brand new, but we've been doing these open preseason pods throughout April, just once a week, trying to get to know members of the ultimate community around here. And it's an opportunity to teach things that we want to see from people at tryouts and that we want to implement throughout the season. So that's been super fun, getting to know a lot of people through those. And we've been a ton of high schoolers have been coming out for these preseason pods, which is exciting for me as a player on Sockeye and a youth coach in Seattle. I just feel like there's just always been so much youth talent in Seattle, and it's exciting to see that continuing to this day. And we've got our first tryout tomorrow. We have 1 open tryout and then many rounds of closed tryouts. So just excited to see some of these people who have been putting in the work at the pods do well at tryouts too.
Yeah. And then again, like we've been talking about, hopefully I'll be able to, or I guess it depends on how quick we can put out this podcast, but maybe it'll like if we get it out quick enough, then people will have enough notice. But there's a potential chance I might be able to come make a guest appearance at one of the tryouts, which would be super exciting to see that. Because yeah, I know like being able to see a lot of like youth players that are just like super excited and passionate about the sport is something that's really cool.
Yeah. How's your tryout season going?
It's been good. We got Alamode tryouts were a while ago, and then Double I tryouts are tomorrow. So that'll be the extensive tryout season for me. Yeah, and then we'll get right into club season, which would be exciting. Feel like the season's already been kind of long because like the soul practice stuff started a couple months ago. But it feels nice to just kind of be like in the thick of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in particular in this club season that you're looking forward to?
Oh, for myself, I think last year I was exclusively just like a cutter defender. Um, and then off like anything I did on offense was just kind of a nice touch. And I just like locked in on defense. So I think this coming season, like one playing smarter on defense, a lot of stuff that you have taught me, which has been very helpful. Also, if people haven't already watched it, up on my YouTube channel, there's a whole analysis that Manny did of one of my games that was super helpful. I think we just like it was supposed to be just like a one-on-one little analysis of my film that we ended up just recording and putting out with really no intentions of like it getting a bunch of views, but it got significantly more views than I thought. And we've kind of seen a lot of like the commentary and the people saying like positive things about it. So yeah, just kind of or check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, applying a lot of the stuff that you taught me there, and then just trying to be more of a threat with the disc too. I think like defense feel pretty confident now. It's about also adding more to my bag. I think. How about yourself?
Um, you know, here we don't get that many like super competitive playing opportunities in the off season because club players, kind of like the Nationals club players, don't play that much league in the off season. But I've been enjoying playing mini with people, and we did have some competitive pickup games with some of the top club players in the city, and that was really fun to be a part of this winter. And I feel like really I've just been working on my athletic base all off season. Like I feel like to really take myself to the next level as a player, I just need to get more explosive. Um, and recently at these pods and whatever events I've been doing, I played a high school practice yesterday. That was super fun. I felt very light on my feet and springy, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome for sure. I mean, you've been putting in the work in your training. I also like, I'm not going to reveal any names, but I also like that you send me messages afterwards of who you cooked in your workouts or when playing mini or whatever. So it looks
It
like
was
progress is
Trent. Trent, we're talking about you.
there we go. I wasn't going to say anything. But yeah, it looks like progress is going in the right direction, which is always good.
Yeah, just an exciting time to, you know, be a frisbee player.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, we've got, like I said, we've got a lot that we want to kind of cover in this episode here. Really want to talk about the Patreon that Manny and I kind of partnered on and launched. It's been a project that we've been planning for quite some time now. At least from my end, like this is something that I've wanted to do for a really really long time. And after talking to Manny, here and there about some different things, right, doing some film analysis, I realized that partnering with Manny would probably be one of the best people to partner with to be able to put out a lot of this content. So we'll really dive deep into what it is here in a minute. But Manny, I wanted to ask you, we've one of the things that we wanted to put out on this Patreon was more information about throwing. And I know something that you did was just go to a lot of the best throwers that you know and start to interview them and like start to talk to them. So can you tell me a little bit about what that process was like?
Yeah, so I feel like uh, I feel like a lot of ultimate players kind of plateau as throwers. I feel like I've kind of fallen into that trap. Like you get to a certain level and then you just don't go out and partner throw as much or do focus throwing. Um, and so I feel like there's still a lot of potential in the sport to be unlocked for throwing. And so I was like, how can I challenge myself more this off season, or uh, can I come up with some drills that I want to do consistently and that maybe I can bring to my teammates or my community? Um, and so we can all elevate our level of throwing. So I talked to a few people. I talked to Manny Eckert, talked to Jesse Schaffner, I talked to Simon Montague, some of the best throwers that I know. I've played with Mac and Simon, or played with Jesse besides a campers versus coaches scrimmage, but um, three great, minds for the game, and three very talented throwers. And some of the common threads I found out talking about them, one, they really got a lot better at throwing, and just like they got a lot of reps at it as they were growing up in their ultimate careers. Like they threw a ton. They were on teams that gave them a role as a thrower. I thought that was really interesting to hear. So I guess it's not surprising that people who are good at throwing have just thrown a lot. That's probably going to be a theme. But I thought it was interesting for people who are maybe like deciding between two teams, like what they want to play, who they want to play for. You always think of like you want to play for the higher level team, the team that's going to challenge you more. But maybe if you want to become really good at throwing, you want to play for the team that's going to get you the more reps in that position. Yeah, I feel like I got a lot of great drills from those people, especially Jesse. Jesse's a very cerebral ultimate player, and like when it comes to training, she has a lot of great stuff to pull from. So recently on the Patreon, I put up a drill that I got from Jesse Schaffner. We did a Sockeye pod a couple of weeks ago. Got some great feedback on it, and I feel like doing this drill has made me a much shiftier break thrower, and I've seen it transform some of the break throwing of the high schoolers I've worked with, like literally in a few minutes, just from doing this drill and kind of applying some of the concepts from it. So shout out Jesse for that one.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what's great too is like what we can do with the Patreon, and kind of what our goal is like just being able to put out some stuff that oftentimes is like experimental. But I talk about this pretty often in that like ultimate is still a relatively new sport. So just the idea that we could have all the answers figured out, I think is completely ridiculous. And so with that, a lot of stuff is constantly going to be evolving, and a lot of stuff is constantly going to be new. And it could be things that like aren't new like in sports, but it could be new to ultimate. So yeah, like with the Patreon, we just kind of want to put out stuff that it's like, hey, we've got stuff that's like tried and true in like principles and theories and a lot of analysis and stuff. But then we've also got a lot of stuff that's just like, hey, this is a drill that maybe we just kind of like came up with, or maybe this is still something that we're trying to like flesh out. And we just want to put out there with like our thoughts of like what it could accomplish, and then let people kind of run wild with it. Because to your point about, like people that are better throwers being in roles where they were asked to throw more. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, but it's like when when you're in that situation, you constantly have to solve different problems, right? Like you have thrower or you have receivers that might be very competent. You might also have very new and unexperienced throwers or receivers. So it's like you constantly have to figure out how to move your mark, how to like change the angle of the disc, the touch of the disc, be able to help out these receivers. Right. But then also with that, you have room to make mistakes. Like if you're the best thrower on the team, you're kind of like you're constantly put in that situation where like you have to create new throws or do whatever it is, but like it's okay to kind of fail in a sense. And that's what I think a lot of players like get held back is they're not put in those environments where they're allowed to fail. Like we can do it in training where like you're just by yourself and you're trying out different throws, and maybe the first couple of times you turf it, like yes, that's you experimenting, right? But then you don't actually get like live reps of you experimenting and being allowed to fail when you're trying to like solve different problems, so to speak, right? So like solving how to break different marks, solving how to, throw different throws. So one thing that I put out on the Patreon was this drill that I've been doing with my friend Nathaniel, where essentially it's like a break mark drill, but we try to replicate like a in-game kind of like trapped on the sideline scenario as best as possible. And then we have like a target. So where we were doing it, there was like this big net set up. So we use this one pole as our target, and that was like our reset handler. And so at first, right, you turn and you're breaking the mark just like normal. You can get like a really low, like big step out around backhand if it's a forced flick. But then over time, right, because we were doing it like where we had a stack of 20 discs, so one person would do 20 throws at a time, right? By rep 10, 11, 12, like the mark starts to learn all your moves. So you have to start getting creative. How can I break this mark when they already know what my move number one is, what my new move number two is, move number three is, right? So you have to be able to move past the defender, solve that problem of getting it to the reset, but then you have to get more and more creative, but you also are allowed to fail in a sense. And I think stuff like that is like what is very beneficial to players, where we start to bridge that gap a little bit of like what you're doing by yourself and then what's actually needed of you in game. Like there's that big kind of middle ground. And yeah, all that to say, like I hope with the Patreon we can kind of provide that, like the bridging of the gap, so to speak.
Yeah, I like the idea of the mark and the thrower in that drill just going back and forth, constantly trying to adapt to each other, which is cool because that's what you're going to need to do in practice to challenge your teammates all summer. And if you have any regional competitors on other teams that you match up against frequently, that's the kind of dynamic it's going to be.
Right. Yeah, because they'll start to learn your bag, so to speak, right? They'll learn your first option, your second option, and then they also start to learn who your like favorite receivers are too. So then like those people start to get locked up a little bit more. So you've got to get like more and more creative with what you're doing. When you were going through like the throwing interviews, were there anything that like really stood out to you? Like, was there anything kind of shocking?
Um, I wouldn't say there was anything shocking. I would say it really just came down to a lot of hard work for those people.
Yeah, that makes sense. With skills, it's like it's all about the repetitions, like you're
Yeah.
saying, right?
Oh, actually, one really interesting thing I learned that Simon Montague does is that Simon, whenever he throws, like no matter how much time he puts into it, he's basically doing like the same throwing routine every single time. And it's really simple. It's just like he throws a few flat forehands and backhands and a few like OIs and some IOs. And so I guess with Simon, that was interesting because you view him as I view him as a really creative thrower in game. But his throwing routine is actually really simple. And I think it goes to show that throwing should not be super complex, especially if you're trying to get better at your throwing in game. Um, and you really just need to get super consistent with the basics before doing anything more complicated, or even just the basics will take you really far in ultimate if you're super competent at those.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like building the foundation of the house before trying to build up your house, essentially. Like you can't build up if you don't have anything that's really supporting all that.
Yeah. So Simon, whenever he's throwing, he's just working on those basic throws to start. And then if he has time, he'll add in kind of expanding his release points or more stuff like that.
I wanted to talk about some of the other stuff that you've put on the Patreon too. I saw that you just put up something with Dylan Freechild. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I've done 3 live streams now. The last one was with Dylan. Dylan and I talked about leadership for a little over an hour, which was a great conversation. I played with Dylan in 2022 on Sockeye. I thought he was a captain that year. I thought he was a great leader. Found him very inspirational. It was really obvious how much he cared about the team, and I feel like that kind of like that kind of bled into everything we did, and it's really easy to pick up on that. So talking to him was really interesting because he's just like all about being himself as a leader, and um, he was kind of talking about that just being authentic is the best way to inspire people, and kind of building connections, like building authentic connections with your teammates. So loves talking to him. And I was just trying to learn from that conversation because this is my first time captaining Sockeye, and really like first time. I don't know. I can't even remember the last team I was captain for, probably in high school. So I was just looking to pick things up from him. Other streams I've done, I talked with Stan Birdsong and Mitch Kolzak about the Sockeye versus Ring semifinal at Nationals in 2019, which is a pretty legendary game. That's when Sockeye went on their title run, but they had a very difficult semi. They were down 8-5 at half versus a Ring team that was pretty young and really exciting and fun to watch. So that whole game was awesome. Super high level of ultimate, like really clean offensive game. And I loved talking with Stan and Mitch, who both played in that game. Stan was on Ring at that time, and Mitch was on Sockeye, and now they're both my teammates on Sockeye. So I just loved hearing their thoughts about what both teams were doing the whole game. And then I also watched a game from last year, Fury versus Brute Squad. I think it was the semifinal at US Open. Watched that with my friend Dina Elimelech, and I'm kind of a Fury stan. Like I love a lot of things about how Fury operates, and they've been like the most dominant ultimate team in the world pretty much for like the past 2 decades. So I think it's incredible what they've been able to do as a team and how they sustain their dominance. So I love hearing about not just the on-field strategies. Honestly, I'm even more interested in the off-field stuff and how they get people to just commit year after year and continue to build such a great team culture. That's like, I guess it's a team culture where everyone is really close on the team, but they're so competitive with each other and committed to winning.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think what's great about this too is like as we're getting the high level analysis like from yourself, and again like if you watch that video up on YouTube, Manny has an extensive background in analyzing film, but then to bring on other people and to kind of like get that insider look into like, okay, what were the people on the field actually thinking, and almost like turning it into a little bit of like a mini podcast at the same time, I think is what's super valuable about this. Like you're getting the analysis, you're getting like the inside the mind of the player, and then you're getting that like kind of extra info that's going along with like just the combo in the stream, which I think is super super cool.
Yeah, and with the analyses we've done so far, like I'm always trying to point out things that I don't see people doing very often that I think people should be doing more often on the field. Like, okay, you should be playing defense this way or looking for this poach. Because I think there are so many things that like regionals level regionals level players could be doing that would result in like free blocks or free goals, like if they can do these things and just know to execute them on the field.
And I think too like to that point, like when you go through the stream, like you go through and then you're able to like extract a lot of those like knowledge nuggets, so to speak, and like that information. And I think it actually kind of like goes well with the name that we chose, like the Ultimate IQ Library. And that like when you go into a library, like you don't just walk in there and it's not like an immediate hit of like dopamine and all the knowledge you need. Like you kind of have to do a little bit of digging to figure out exactly what you're looking for. And I think it's kind of the same here where it's like um just to be like transparent, like we're not packaging like the info that we have up into these like cute little 20-second Instagram reels for you to then like see on Instagram and get like a quick little like and dopamine hit. Like this is stuff that we hope is like for kind of players that are really trying to take things to the next level. and be able to go in there and like watch a full analysis and like really dissect exactly what's happening. And so instead of like that kind of fast hitting content, like we want this to be like very educational, very informative, with the goal of like being like much more valuable in a sense because of just because of like the way it's being delivered.
Yeah, and when I was trying to edit these streams, I talked with Stan and Mitch for over 2 hours, and I was just like, I don't know what to cut out because we're pretty much pointing stuff out the entire time, like what the players are doing on the fields. And so I pretty much just decided to leave it.
Yeah,
So I uploaded pretty much, I just cut out some of the setup time at the beginning, but I uploaded the whole video on Patreon for that stream and the one with Dina and the one with Dylan, because it's just like it's pretty densely packed with information, I would say.
for sure. And then how often did you say like the streams were going to come out? I know you said like at least once a month, but is it like twice a month
Yeah,
kind of the goal?
yeah, I think I can do at least twice a month. Already got some ideas for the next guest. Just want to give myself a few days to make sure everything is up on the Patreon right now before I record something else.
Yeah. And I think that's what people can kind of expect too with the Patreon in general. Like we've got at least one stream a month, right? But then we've got just probably about like 4 to 5 videos in total kind of coming. So I guess this is a good segue to kind of dive into everything about the Patreon. But at least from my end, Manny, I'll let you talk about your stuff. But like at least on my end, what you can expect is a lot more of like the exercise stuff, the thing that I'm known for. So the things I want to put out are like a lot of field drills and exercises. So stuff that I kind of already have up on the Patreon, or like a lot of kind of partner reaction drills to be able to work on like your agility when you're up on the field. I know Manny's got some of those coming too, but yeah, just some field drills, a lot of exercise demos too. I know when I put exercises up on Instagram, it's just a very quick kind of shot of what the exercise is and maybe like one cue. But I have very like longer, more in-depth like exercise videos that I use a lot of times for clients when I'm giving them exercises. And I thought for some of the exercises that I prescribe, a lot of times being able to put that information out in like a full kind of coaching video of how to do that exercise, I thought would be really helpful. And then a lot of like training theory stuff, which sounds boring, but this is where I feel like the meat and potatoes of the information is, at least from my end. Like I get a ton of questions about like how to structure a workout program, or what should I be doing, when should I be doing this, and it's like this is kind of a brain dump on my end. So some of the stuff that I've already put out, for example, I made a video that just kind of went over like 3 weeks of my training. So what the workout was, why I decided to do that workout that day, how I scheduled it in my week, how I scheduled it around tryouts and practice and tournaments and things like that. Also, there's a video up on there about just like stress and recovery. So learning how to manage stress, how to manage recovery, how to know if you're doing too much, when to take a rest day, that sort of thing. I believe that's all I have out there right now, but definitely a lot more kind of like educational training related content coming from my end.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I love doing these streams with some of the top players in the game and just hearing about their thought process. Um, Also, other stuff for me, I am planning on doing kind of like series on a topic, like a series of videos on one topic, such as like handler D. That'll probably be the first thing I do, or like horizontal stack or vertical stack, and really just diving into kind of all the fine details, because um, there's so much to be covered with like any of those topics that you can't just talk about on an Instagram reel. And other stuff, I feel like I've got a lot of kind of like little drills. Like I uploaded one on catching recently, and uh, I did that drill, that catching drill a lot in 2022, my rookie year of Sockeye, and I feel like that helped my hands massively this season. And so, yeah, probably looking to do live streams with top players, looking to build more longer video series, kind of some quick hit drills as well, and maybe kind of like some medium content, like maybe like a 5 or 10 minute video to drill. I've been experimenting with a lot of drills with high schoolers I've been coaching this spring, and it's been really fun to see what works and what doesn't. And there have definitely been plenty of failures on my end, like, oh, this thing was way too complicated. But it's been fun and also challenge uh, see how I can like isolate a situation in a game that I really need people to get better at into a drill that we do at practice.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm most excited to just see a lot of those drills, because those are kind of like the most common questions I get, and it's like I understand, like that's what people are looking for, is like that fast hitting content, right? So like, what are good speed drills, cutting drills, throwing drills, catching drills that I can do, and it's like just like on the Patreon is where we're just gonna have like a huge library of things for you to try out. And yeah, just to kind of reiterate that point, like a lot of this stuff is experimental, which I think is okay. Like, I think if somebody's out there like claiming that they have all the definitive answers to everything, it's like that's probably where you need to start questioning things. Because like, well, again, Ultimate's not that old of a sport, right? And it's like, if we think we've got it all figured out, that's a little silly to me. Like, this experimental process is it's like where I hope people can kind of learn and be able to expand their own ideas into it as well. I like the courses too. To touch on that, like the Cam Brock cutting course is up on the Patreon already too. So unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know who Cam Brock is, the all-time leading goal scorer in the UFA. But he made a 5-part video series all about cutting, where he's analyzing his own film. So again, we get that kind of like inside the mind look into like what he's thinking about. So that's up on Patreon. I know some people have been asking about that. But Manny, I know one that you already made and is up there is like on tryouts. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I started a collection. They're called collections on Patreon, kind of like a category of videos. One other kind of collection that I started is called Manny Monologues. And so I plan to just kind of take a topic and talk about it for like 20 or 30 minutes. So this video on tryouts, kind of just talking about all the different phases of tryouts and what you should be doing during each phase. So I've got preseason, or no, it starts with off season, then preseason, and then tryouts. But I split tryouts into 2 categories: stuff that you can do on the field that'll help your chances of making the team that you're trying out for, and stuff that you can do off the field. So it's about like 27 minutes, I think, of me just like saying, oh, you should be working on this thing or prioritizing this thing at this point. And, just what you can do to give yourself the best odds of making the team that you want to make.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. I like the Manny monologue. Like that's what I would call my own podcast. Like at first it just kind of started as like Justin's monologues, a way to just rant about different topics. But like I've said before, I think those rants and those or at least minor rants, sorry, but like when I kind of go on a topic, it ends up being a rant or a ramble. But I feel like that's where a lot of value and like learning can kind of come from. So yeah, super excited about that. I'll have some courses out there as well. Another thing that's coming from my end, a lot of times, right, on the podcast, I have some guests on, and there's a lot of extra questions that I want to ask them that we don't end up getting the time to talk about. So when I have guests on, expect a lot of kind of like exclusive content that'll just be up on the Patreon as well. So, maybe like an hour-long episode with them, but then maybe 30 extra minutes that are just going up on the Patreon. So you can kind of look for that sort of thing as well. But once again, this is something that I've been super excited about. I know Manny's super excited about it. When we first kind of decided that this is really what we were going to go into, like I kind of just went on this role of just producing like a ton of videos super quickly. So that's why like up on Instagram, like I have been very inactive with posting reels, just because a lot of my effort and my time has been going into making sure that like Patreon content is super good. And I know Manny's cranking out a bunch of videos as well. So expect good deal of content and value already up there. But then our goal is just to continue to deliver on that. So month to month, there's always going to be stuff that's coming out that'll be very valuable, a lot that you can kind of learn from. Manny, as we kind of wrap this up, anything else you want to say about the Patreon or just anything in general?
I guess one more thing I wanted to plug for the Patreon was that for a lot of the streams I've been doing, I want to like put out in advance the guests we're gonna have on, so y'all can ask whatever questions you want to ask those people.
For sure. I think that's great too, like getting a little Q&A with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And along that note too, like is some exclusive Q&As with just Manny and I, something that we kind of plan on doing too. Either we'll make it like a live Q&A thing where I know a lot of times live doesn't always work out the best. So we can just kind of take a bunch of questions, make another little podcast like this, which I think would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about Frisbee, and I doubt I'll ever get tired of it. It's been about 15 years, and I'm even more enthusiastic now than when I started. So um, I'm really just happy to answer questions at any time and discussion.
Yeah. And the sport's growing, man. There's always something, I feel like. Always something with the sport that we can talk about. Manny, I'm gonna leave you with the last question I ask. I've asked you this question before on the podcast. I try to finish all the podcasts with it, but I want to know what the greatest minds in the sport are pondering. Right? I want to know what keeps LeBron James up at night thinking about basketball. So what is something that you've been thinking about recently that you're pondering?
Wow, I didn't prep an answer to this question. uh, I think it is okay. So I'm coaching high school, right? Also captaining Sockeye, so I have some influence in the strategies we're using this year. What are the differences um, in the strategies that I want to use with my high schoolers and the strategies that I want to use with Sockeye, and kind of differentiating between the levels of ultimate and figuring out what works for some levels and what doesn't work for those levels. That's what I'm curious about right now.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Youth versus more adult ultimate kind of. No, that's good stuff. I mean, I know I think about that a lot from like an exercise perspective, like youth training versus adult training, obviously very different. I never thought about it from a strategy perspective though. I like that. I know we'll probably continue to talk on that. But
Okay, wait. What about you? What are your questions?
oh, dang. I was
I'm gonna put
hoping you
you on the
wouldn't.
spot.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't ask back. Let me think for a sec. No, I think like with ultimate a lot of times people come from a different sport in ultimate or before ultimate, right? So like I played basketball my whole life and then I got into ultimate in college, and I think a lot of people have a very similar story where ultimate wasn't the first sport that they played. But there's also a lot of people that didn't really play any sports and then they started playing ultimate for the first time. So there's a lot of different like athletic backgrounds in ultimate. And so, from then a training perspective, I don't think we can give everybody the same training. So that's where, like, when people ask me what's the best thing for ultimate, I always say it depends. And there's a million reasons it depends, but one of them is also a person's background, right? I've played basketball for multiple years, so I have a lot more experience jumping and cutting and stuff than somebody who hasn't done that before, right? So we can't do the same training program. I'm just using myself as an example. I don't mean to sound like egotistic or anything, but then I think it then comes down to like what is the most minimum effective dose for training, right? If people are playing a whole bunch, right? If they have varied exercise backgrounds, right? And their ultimate players just play so much ultimate in general, it's hard to add more stress onto that in the form of training. So what is the minimum effective dose of training that would give everybody good results, but then not take away from their ability to play ultimates? That's something I'm still trying to kind of figure out.
That's awesome, and I'm excited to see some of your thoughts this summer since you'll be programming workouts for Sockeye.
That's right. Programming work. Yeah, actually, that kind of triggers another thought that I had too, because it's I'll be making workouts for Sockeye, but also um, trying to revamp the warm ups. I guess it's something I'm doing for the club team Alamode that I play on. Something that I hope to bring to Sockeye too. Yeah, I guess we can kind of end with this, but Like when we think about dynamic warm-ups, it seems like everybody, like no matter what skill level you are, if you play pro, if you play youth, no matter what skill level, no matter what sport you are, everybody seems to do the same warm-up. It's the same boring combination of like hip mobility, then high knees, butt kicks, maybe sprint a couple times, jump a couple times, and then you're ready to play. And it's like, who has ever actually enjoyed that? Right? Like there's a reason that the coaches and the captains have to yell at you to lock in, because it's just so boring and you just want to talk to your friends and your teammates the whole time and goof off. Like I get it. And it's not a product of like people are not focused. It's just a product of like you are making them do the most boring thing ever. So my thoughts recently have been, how can we make warm-ups more effective? How can we make warm-ups almost like a mini version of training, right? And how can we extract value out of the warm-up to, one, obviously warm people up and make them ready to practice or play, but then how can the warm-up itself be some sort of like training stimulus in a sense? Like can guys get better after doing a warm-up a little bit? So something that I've been playing around with a little bit with owl mode, something I hope to bring to Sockeye, and then something hopefully you'll see in the Patreon very soon.
Sweet.
Cool. Yeah, that is everything. Once again, Patreon is called the Ultimate IQ Library. It'll be down in the show notes. It's in Manny's link in bio. It's in my link in bio. So make sure you check it out. Subscribe, if you will, or whatever you call it. I guess sign up for being a Patreon.
Yeah,
sure.
Whatever the terminology is.
Yeah, please support if you would. But yeah, Manny, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the TOBU Fitness Podcast. Our passion is to be your guide in elevating your game and mastering the art of ultimate Frisbee through the lens of strength and conditioning. No hype, just substance. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Instagram and YouTube at TOBU Fitness. And to get info on one-on-one coaching and training programs, hit the website at tobufitness.com. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time on the TOBU Fitness Podcast.